afternoon, I have been tasked to discuss oral and poster presentation. This is actually in preparation for the upcoming annual research forum for students of the Department of Preventive and Community Medicine. So having said that, at the end of the session, the students will be able to, number one, discuss the general pointers when presenting research either in oral or poster format in a formal scientific session or conference. So the exercise that we will be having towards the end of the semester um, is actually a glimpse of what may potentially happen to some of you if you will be given the opportunity to present your research paper in an academic session outside of the medical center. And second, we will try to develop the appropriate attitude towards epidemiologic investigation to cultivate a culture of research, including possible practical research related endeavors. I want you to understand that, farewell, sorry, farewell. I'm sorry for this. Can you give me 5 minutes? Okay, sorry for that. Can you see my slides? Hello?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. So basically, I also want you to develop that kind of attitude that when it comes to research, I want you to understand that this is not just for academic purposes, but rather, this can open doors of opportunities for you to really develop other facets of being a holistic physician. So, if you recall, when we talk of the five-star physician, the five-star physician has multiple facets or multiple elements. The most obvious of which is that of being a healthcare provider. But in the course of your journey as future medical frontliners, you will understand that there are other responsibilities that are expected of you as doctors. No? And one of this is that of being a researcher. When we talk of being a researcher, we could be on two sides or on the two extreme ends of the spectrum. You could be the people doing the actual research, or you could be the end users of research. Meaning to say, if there is research, how do you use data from epidemiologic investigations into your private practice or into your clinical practice? So this is the five-star physician paradigms. However, I'd like to give you the heads up that we are now moving towards what we now refer to as the six-star physician, wherein the sixth facet is that of being a navigator of the healthcare provider delivery network. So this is something that is an addendum to the five-star family, to the five-star physician. So let me give you my personal journey when it comes to research. This picture is very significant for me. It's something that is very memorable. This was the Asia Pacific Medical Education Conference, or the APMEC. And this was one of those international conferences that I was able to have the opportunity to present one research paper. So this was taken in January of 2020, and this was the last international trip that I had in 2020 before the Philippines was placed on enhanced community quarantine.
Recording in progress.
And if you're going to look at the members of the UERM delegation, some of our colleagues also presented papers at the APMEC together with back then the dean, Dr. Norbert Tingling Uy, and of course our college secretary, Dr. Vina Marie Tenorio Quinones. So this is something that is very memorable, but because not we we didn't know back then in January that the following month, or at least in March of 2020, we will be placed on enhanced community quarantine. And during this APMEC convention, I was that was my last oral presentation of a research paper pre-pandemic. Remember when we're talking of oral presentations at scientific conferences and symposia, these are formal academic discussions. Therefore, you should always bear in mind that when you deliver an oral presentation, your members of the audience are not novices on the subject matter, but rather they are people regarded as informed, well informed experts in their different fields of specialization. And they normally gather together because they are all interested to gain more knowledge. And this is something that this is one of the reasons why they would normally listen to your presentation. Now, in most scientific conferences, we also have poster presentations. Remember, for poster presentations, these are also the same venue where the oral presentations normally take place, and therefore the audience are still the same set of experts, although usually the poster presentations are less formal compared to your oral presentations. Now, the fact that the audience is generally composed of well-informed experts should, however, never discourage any young or neophyte scientist to present at such scientific conferences, as most well-balanced good scientists of high stature will often use this opportunity to positively criticize and build the self-esteem of younger colleagues rather than breaking them down. So this is an opportunity for us to mingle with the experts of our chosen fields of specialization. And never have I encountered members of the audience who would blatantly put down or bash a presenter. Rather, when we discuss during presentations, most of the feedback are mostly for positive development or positive criticism. So science is much bigger than any scientist, and the value of solid, good scientific argumentation and facts will never be negotiable. This is the reason why we engage in presentations. We want to have open dialogues, we want to gain more information, and we of course learn from our colleagues. Now, most research presentations have the basic structure for purposes of scientific documentation. But bear in mind that normally when you present, there is time constraint. There is very limited time, and therefore, you must be able to deliver your message clearly given the short time provision. And we normally format it using the IMRAD format. The most important parts of any scientific presentation that is based on research will primarily be the results and the discussion of the results. So when we're talking of the IMRAD, if you go back to the lectures, no? So we have the introduction. Normally, if this is a written report, the introduction is just a short summary of your previous literature review from your research proposal. We normally summarize everything in 3 to 5 paragraphs, and usually the last sentence of the last paragraph of the introduction would be the general objective of the research. The methodology summarizes how the study was conducted, while the results would delve onto the summary of the data that you were able to gather, and the discussion would relate, it would compare or contrast whatever data that you gathered from that of published literature.
Sige. Apat yung ginagawa niya.
Hmm. So, over the years, I've been given the opportunity to deliver oral and poster presentations to quite a number of scientific conferences already. And what I am tasked to do now is to give you a practical, more like a mentoring session on tips on how to be an effective presenter. I'm not saying I am a perfect presenter, but over the years, I was able to gather um, information on how to make your presentations more effective. Let's start with the slide deck. Make sure that you prepare the slide deck with much with much um, detail. First and foremost, ensure that the slide deck can effectively serve its purpose of being a visual aid. So when we're talking of the visual presentation, if this were a PowerPoint presentation, normally we would tell our presenters to use contrasting color schemes. Normally, you would have a light background and you would use font that is dark in character. We also try to minimize unnecessary animations. I remember there was a time that the Prexy, if you heard of Prexy, the Prexy was for a while. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So, if you recall, back in perhaps a few years back, Prexy was one of those internet-based presentations used by many doctors, and Prexy was initially very impressive because it made your slide presentations more animated. However, there would be doctors who would be maximizing the animation with Prexy, and to the point that it becomes less effective and it's a bit distracting already. So we don't want that when you present your research. Avoid use of irrelevant support materials. Sometimes there would be presenters who would include photos of their pets or their families. Of course, it depends on what is the mood of your presentation. If you are having a scientific conversation with a group of experts, it might be prudent that you only stick to those images or photos that are really relevant to your presentation. But if your discussion is something that is of a light topic, then maybe that's the time you could put some of your favorite photos just to break the monotony of the presentation. So again, this is not an absolute thing. It's at a case-to-case basis on how you would maximize the use of such images. Now, I would also recommend that if you are a neophyte presenter, find time to practice. For some who may have difficulty with talking spontaneously, having a script or a reading from cue cards can be very effective during the actual presentation. When you deliver your presentation, please ensure that proper grammar is consistently correct. Subject-verb agreement, appropriate tense, plural forms of nouns, These are some of the things that would normally make your presentations effective. Some of you might argue, what about for those people who are non-English speaking individuals? For example, earlier this month, I was in Busan, in South Korea, attending the WONCA. WONCA is the International Organization of Family Doctors, and the Asia Pacific Regional Conference of WONCA was held in Busan. And of course, in Busan, there were different Asian family physicians presenting their papers. There were Japanese, there were Taiwanese, Chinese, Indonesians, Laotians presenting their papers, and not all of them are quite confident with the use, or they're not particularly fluent with the use of the English language. And although they will not be criticized for their poor grammar, sometimes it makes the presentation less effective if you're listening to someone who speaks with multiple grammatical errors. So again, I would highly encourage that you continue to practice, practice, and practice. Be sure you can pronounce unfamiliar words, especially if there will be technical terms or medical jargon. Master the slide deck that you will be using, taking note of the correct sequence of slide animation and transitioning. Sometimes it might also be smart that you're able to look at the space or the actual venue of your presentation. If there will be a podium, sometimes the use of the podium could also facilitate the discussion. Knowledge of the podium and the facilities in the lecture hall will enable the presenter to make use and control of all of these facilities in order to support the presentation optimally. If possible, view your slide presentation in a large room to see that colors project as they should. I do remember that there was one time I was presenting in Bangkok, and one of the LCD projectors was not effective, or was not actually casting the correct colors. And I remember there was a time I was questioned if the patient was jaundiced, simply because the LCD projector was more of the yellow hue, but I was presenting a patient with normal color of the skin. So sometimes it might be nice that if there is an opportunity for you to check on the surroundings, that you do that prior to your actual presentation. Use the speaker's preview room if it's available to see that formatting of the slide deck presentation did not change. This is particularly true if you're using, let's say, if you created your presentation using, let's say, MacBook, and then you're presenting using a Windows computer. Sometimes even if the slide deck is compatible, the formatting can be rearranged. And so it also distracts your audience if the format of your slide deck has been altered inadvertently when you transfer the file from one computer to the next. So I've mentioned this, check compatibility of computer units. And I would also recommend that you have multiple copies of your slide presentation. If you're bringing your own laptop or your tablet, make sure that you store it in the internal memory of your device. I often would bring my thumb drive before, or sometimes I upload my presentation in the cloud drive, so that in the event that there will be technical glitches, I would still have copies of my slide presentation. Now, if you are delivering an oral presentation, I would also highly encourage that you be punctual, be on time, and if possible, proceed to the venue at least several minutes or even an hour earlier. If there is a need to save the slide deck in another computer, ensure that your presentation will be ready for viewing on your designated time slot. This is very true if you're attending, let's say, postgraduate courses, and there would be let's say in a 3 hour period, there will be four consecutive speakers. There would be organizers that would gather all your slide decks initially and then put it in just one computer. And so it might be best that you have the opportunity to check on this computer, view your slide decks before your actual presentation. And there will be those that would give you um, uh, time cues. Sometimes there would be a moderator who would show you signals it's time to end your presentation, or if there's a computer a prompter monitor. In the prompter monitor, you can also see the time remaining. So be mindful of the time, not just before the presentation, but even during the actual presentation. And if possible, stay within the venue for the entire duration of the scientific conference and the research forum. I remember one time that I think I was in Singapore, and so there was a group of five people who visited Singapore for the very first time, and they were presenting with us. And right after their presentation, I think they had a tour that was waiting for them. And so they left without knowing that there was a Q&A or an open forum after their presentation. Of course, when it was time for them, the organizers were calling them back to the stage. They were no longer in the venue. So to avoid that confusion or that untoward incident, I would prefer that if this research conference or the research program is ongoing, stay within the venue throughout the entire duration of the conference. How should you prepare in terms of OOTD, or your outfit of the day? So wear the right clothing. Normally, we would prefer that you come as someone, you report to the venue being neat, formal, and comfortable. And always try to appear appropriately groomed at all times. Just to share with you an experience. So I attended one local convention of the Philippine Dermatological Society. And this was during my residency years in PGH. And of course, when you're a resident, you normally are haggard, especially in PGH, because back then when I was in training, the entire venue, the PGH was not air conditioned. So the stench, the sweat. So you come up very haggard looking. And I remember we were required to attend, I think day one or day two of the Philippine Dermatological Society convention. And so out of PGH, we went straight to the venue. But I took a bath. My one of my co-residents did not even bother to freshen up. And when we reached the venue, and I remember back then it was in Pan Pacific Hotel. Now I think it's now Sheraton Manila. So in Pan Pacific Hotel, so all the dermatologists were in their proper appearance, prim and proper. When the time that males did not use skincare products or did not have makeup on, the male dermatologists were already fully made up. And I remember one of my co-residents saying, "No, kung pagkakamalan tayo utusan dito dahil mukha daw silang busabos." So always ensure that you're properly groomed when you are presenting, so that you won't be, or sometimes there will be people who will be mistaken to be, cleaners, because they're not properly groomed. So when you are presenting, come in your professional appearance. Some conferences would require you to be in Filipiniana, or sometimes you can just wear your basic suit or something that is business or business casual, or sometimes you can be required to come in your white gowns. So it depends on what will be required of the presenters. Now, art of communication, it is imperative that you effectively communicate with your audience. And when I say communicate, I am not only referring to the verbal output, but I'm also referring to your nonverbal cues. So try to establish rapport through eye contact. When you are talking in front of an audience, try to scout around, look at the people around you. If there is an opportunity for eye to eye contact, that is a very good positive nonverbal cue. Things to take into account include self image, your voice enhancement, enthusiasm. Pausing and even a bit of dramatizing can help break the boring monotony of a scientific presentation. I think over the years, you develop that confidence that will allow you to spontaneously and confidently address the audience. Some of you might have stage fright. That is perfectly understandable. But at the end of the day, when you deliver your presentation, you are not let the members of the audience intimidate you, but rather with the change of the quality of your voice, the voice timbre, the way you exude confidence, enthusiasm, it will make or break your oral presentations. Don't ever be apologetic during all oral presentations. I remember one of my co-residents when we were presenting in an international convention, but this was held in Lawag. So it was an international conference. It was in Lawag, and at the start, the very start of her presentation, she goes, "I apologize. I'm very flustered. I'm very nervous." Don't do that. If you already project an image of someone who's very nervous or anxious, it makes the presentation less effective. Now, during the presentation proper, be mindful also of how you are being addressed or how you are being introduced by the moderator. If the moderator has already read out your curriculum vitae or your bio note, and your title has been read already, then there is no information. I sometimes find it cringeworthy. For example, I am Doctor Blah blah blah, and I come from blah 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 blah, and the title of my research is blah 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 blah. I find that very unengaging because people can actually read whatever you're flashing on the monitor. So you don't have to be redundant. You don't have to repeatedly say things that your audience will already know. Refrain from irritating manners or habits. I remember there was in one of the research fora that I attended, one of the students kept on pulling on her hair. So she kept on fixing her hair, and sometimes when she's being asked, she would unconsciously twirl her finger twirl her hair using her finger. I find that very unprofessional, and she may not that, but those are things that you try to avoid. Do not use excessive hand signs. Minimize moving around so much that it is disturbing. This is not like TED Talk, that you are given a stage and you can move from one edge to the next of the entire stage. Try to minimize that. When there is a podium, there is a reason why a podium is being provided. Or more so, if you are behind, if behind you there is a big LED projector screen, if you keep on moving around on the stage, it could be considered distracting. If possible, try to minimize your verbal graffiti. A lot of people, especially Filipinos, would go, ano kaya, so try to minimize that. Or there would be people who would keep on repeating words, actually. So these are what we refer to as your verbal graffiti. And if you keep on committing such errors in presentation, it makes your presentation less effective. Avoid reading verbatim, especially in a monotonous voice, whatever is written on the slide deck or in your cue cards. This is most especially true if, let's say, the research forum happens from 1 o'clock onwards. After having your sumptuous lunch, you develop splanchnic pooling. Your, the blood is basically not circulating properly in your head. And then you listen to someone who is just reading his or her slide decks in a very monotonous voice. No matter how interesting the topic may be, it can induce sleep and sedation among your members of the audience. Rather, speak clearly to deliver your message effectively across the audience. If there is a big LED projector behind you, you might need to have a pointer that can allow the audience be guided, especially if you're doing, let's say, if you're presenting a very busy slide. Let's say there is an algorithm or there is a process flow that you want to discuss the flow one by one. So the use of a pointer could be very effective for your presentation. When you have graphs, illustrations, or algorithms, please ensure that you give a brief description or you elaborate concisely on these matters. Now, stick to the designated time limitation. I remember that there would be people there would be research conferences wherein they would have buzzers. So, for example, if you're given only 7 minutes of presentation, you will hear the first buzzer, let's say 6 minutes from the time you started. Then the signal for the final or that you have consumed the 7 minutes would be a longer buzz tone. There would be presenters who would even try to cram their presentation because they didn't really prepare. So you're given a 7-minute preparation, but you have, let's say, 30 slides. It is impossible for you to finish 30 slides with just 7 minutes. And so it is imperative that you are aware of the designated time. If there will be multiple speakers, it is also irritating when you consume the time slot of the next speaker. So make sure you properly do time check. A rule of thumb is that 1 minute should be allocated perhaps maximum with your title slide and your thank you slide, maximum perhaps of just 10 slides. So you'll need to really identify what information you will present in each slide. So I also want to draw your attention to the audience attention curve. Right now, I've been talking already for about 30 minutes or so, and I am sure some of you have already dozed off, because that's very typical, especially in this ungodly hour. You've just consumed your heavy lunch, and you might feel very, very sleepy. But the same thing will happen during scientific conferences. After lunch, your audience might be very, very groggy. So you don't want to bore them. And no matter how eloquent you may be, sometimes your audience will just simply doze off. So what do we do if you have a very long presentation and you are not able to properly address this boredom, or you lose the attention of your audience? So there is what we call your first minute impression. When I say first minute impression, At the start of your slide deck, the first minute, everyone will be paying attention to you. They would listen to you. They would listen to your objective. But beyond the first minute, their minds will begin to wander off. And this is the moment that you have to ensure that you're able to connect to your audience and that you would be able to establish what needs to be listened to throughout the duration of your presentation. This is the most opportune time to make clear that you will share important information and findings, and that your audience should be anticipating to listen to what you are about to say. If you want to get your message through, you should state it loud and clear in the beginning. Then you can periodically repeat it at the end of every part of your presentation. So, if you will remember, I told you that the attention curve or attention span of your audience will be very limited. So, what as a piece of advice I can recommend is you divide your presentations into themes or subtopics. Therefore, if you deliver the themes or subtopics sequentially, you break the monotony of your presentation. This makes your presentation more effective, and there will be multiple subsets of the discussion points that you will be presenting to your audience. Title should be preferably be placed on the left rather than in the middle, because our eyes are accustomed to read from left to right. So I think more on the layout of your slide deck. If you will notice, if I look at this slide deck, the guidelines for MS PowerPoint is actually aligned towards the left. I did not put it deliberately in the middle because physiologically, if you're presented with something, you tend to read from left to right. Try to use lowercase lettering rather than using all caps, because this can be interpreted as something that is easier to read and understand with better comprehension level. Please all one of my pet peeves, for example, when I speak for pharmaceutical companies, so most pharma companies, when I deliver lectures for pharma, they would give you already a slide deck. And then it is your task to review the slide deck prior to your presentation. They hire someone who would fix the layout of your slide deck. And normally, the aesthetics of the slide deck are factored in when the slide decks are prepared. And when the slide decks are not, let's say, using standard or uniform fonts, for me, that makes the presentation less effective. So I normally stick to one font. The font that I use for slide 1 will be the same font, same color, same style, same spacing until the very end of my last slide. So I've mentioned this. Try to use some font that is usually 32. If you want to use it for the headings, then the usual text is just 24. If the text is too small, let's say, for example, you don't have the benefit of an LED projector, and if you are, let's say, staying in a venue that is not amphitheater-ish in orientation, but there are venues that are like amphitheaters wherein the rows are gradually going up. Sometimes if you're seated at the back, you might not be able to read the monitor if the font is too small. More so if you are all seated on level ground. So make sure that your font is readable about 10 to 15 feet away from your audience. Ideally, the slide should be very clearly visible, even for people seated in the back of the conference room or scientific hall. Use font that is plain and will reflect clearly The most recommended font would be Arial, Tahoma, and Kandara. Some recommend limiting the text to just 5 lines per slide and to avoid using complete sentences. This is very true for, let's say, our colleagues are doing their masteral degrees in health profession education or health science education. There is even the way we use the slides. There are guidelines to make it more effective. Use only one background color throughout the entire presentation. Make sure that the contrast between the background and the text color is good. Use dark colors on a light background or light colors on a dark background. Preferably do not use red and green together, as colorblind people will not be able to read the text and font. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Ishihara's color chart. I'm not sure if there are colorblind people in the gallery right now, but I am red-green colorblind. Looking at this Ishihara, I don't see any number whatsoever, but for the non-colorblind people, I believe you can see the number 74. So if you have audience members who are colorblind, it might not be advisable to use this for your slide decks. Make use of pictures, graphs, flow charts rather than text and numbers to help tell the story. If appropriate and necessary, show data numbers prominently, and framing of graphs is not generally recommended as too many lines and can sometimes be confusing. Include a slide with appropriate picture or graph for every fifth slide. This would also break the monotony of your presentation. Now, there are those which would normally use recorded or timed presentation. Beware of setting a fixed time for each slide to transition automatically throughout the presentation proper. Sometimes, if you are inadvertently interrupted for whatever reason, and then it's already pre-recorded, then you lose the opportunity to make the presentation if the timed presentation has already moved forward and you are stuck with your script. So just be careful if you're going to use a timed presentation for transitioning. This is not highly encouraged by a lot of experts, but this can sometimes happen. Again, the issue here, if there is any glitch, then this can lead to problems with the presentation. Scientific posters normally contain the same structural layout that one will find with any scientific document. So often, research posters still follow the IMRAD format. Now, for the research poster, there are also several information that need to be planned when doing the layout of your presentation. Identify what data will be presented, how much information will be shared, and try to look into the organization of contents, integration of visual elements, creation of focus points of discussion, and you try to establish correct relationship of elements that will become visually acceptable to your audience. A poster presentation should basically include the formal scientific part on the poster itself, and while you are presenting, you should discuss and present your data in a relaxed scientific manner. This is the conference that we attended last year in Singapore. There will be poster presentations where literally it's just a poster. And people would just walk around the venue, read your poster, and then that's it. But there are research poster presentations wherein you are required to stand beside your digital poster. For example, in this case, our student was just standing beside her poster, let's say for 2 hours. And anyone who approaches her can ask questions right there and then. A poster, unlike your slide presentation, your poster would contain all the data in your slide deck with just one visual aid. That's the purpose of your research poster. So when I say poster, it could also be your now more advanced digital poster. So this was the very first digital poster I used in an international convention. This was from the Hong Kong University School of Medicine back in 2018. So this was the first time sabi ko ang social ng digital poster, no? But there would be those that would still require your tarpaulin poster. For purposes of the annual research forum for students of the Department of Preventive and Community Medicine, you are required to come up with a printout of your regular poster using your tarpaulin. So the title is important as it catches the eye first. So again, if you are working for pharmaceutical companies and you want to capture the interest of your audience, often the research studies would have catchy trial names. For example, the TICOS trial, the Declare trial, or the the Declare, or the Carmelina trial, or the STEPS trial. So these are sometimes acronyms because sometimes the recall factor is important to make your poster presentation effective. Play around with the layout until it pleases your eyes. There is no absolute wrong or absolutely correct layout. Just make sure it is visually appealing to your target audience. Now, a poster with a background will attract more attention than a plain one. So sometimes this is why you could use very light themed designs. The designs could also help get the attention of your audience, but usually it's the content. So just make sure that you're able to look into these practical tips. Oh, one more thing. When you say you have a poster presentation, this is not just merely cutting and pasting your abstract and just making it enlarged. No. You really need to identify what parts of the IMRAD, your introduction, your methodology, your results, and your discussion, which of these would be incorporated in your poster presentation. Avoid cramming the research poster with too much text, as well as figures and tables. Ensure that there are no spelling mistakes or any grammatical errors. Again, if I were a member of the panel of judges, I normally would deduct points for papers that lack grammatical appropriateness, or if there would be repeated misspelled words. So I am quite a grammar Nazi when I do judging for research posters. Now, when you are invited in scientific conferences to come up with a poster presentation, ensure that you put it up and at the end of the conference, bring it down. I remember when I was in pre-pandemic, so I attended the World Federation for Medical Education. And there were many, I would assume they're Chinese. I don't want to be called racist, but I'm assuming they're Chinese because of their behavior. Okay. Sige, forget I said that. But what they did after the poster presentation, they literally just left all their tarpaulins in the venue, which is a big no-no. When you are invited to come up with a poster, and you are asked to bring it up or put it up, have the decency to bring it down and even bring it home to the Philippines. Or if you don't want to bring it back home, Nagpasalubong shopping ka, mag-excess baggage ka na, dispose of your posters in your hotel. But do not leave it in the venue. That is very unprofessional of you if you do that. Be at your poster site during your poster viewing times in case visitors or judges will question on your research study. I remember I first attended the very first international Wonka conference that I did. It was in 2011 and it was in La Hogue, waterfront La Hogue in Iloilo City. And I remember that the poster presentation was from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 5. So we were just literally standing by our poster from 2 to 5 until foreign judges would come to us and ask questions about the poster. Now, if for whatever reason you decide not to attend the conference, please withdraw your poster in a timely manner. If, for example, there was one incident that this was in Korea. So this was in Seoul. I attended the World Federation for Medical Education. One of the Filipino delegates had an earlier flight back home compared to the other Filipino delegates. And she had her poster placed up. So what she did, she asked one of her colleagues to bring down the poster after the Q&A. So if you are courteous enough to the organizing committee, please do this. Now, what will be the content of your oral presentation? I believe this was already discussed by Dr. Wang in his previous lecture. But just to give you again, be mindful that if you have the annual research forum, you are given, I think, I'm not sure if it's 7 or 8 minutes, but it's just a limited time duration. Be mindful that one slide is about 1 minute. So for example, if there is an opportunity for you to combine the parts of your paper, for example, for slide 1, it could already include, let's say, introduction and significance, and you lump them together. But basically, this is how we would normally come up with a few limited slides. So slide number 1 would be the title. Slide number 2 would be about the summary of the introduction. Slide number 2 would be the objectives. Then the 4th slide would be the hypothesis formulation. And the 5th slide would be looking into the methodology. For the methodology, sometimes it is more effective that you present an algorithm or a process flow rather than the narrative of how you conducted or how you facilitated the data collection process. Then perhaps dedicate 3 slides, 1 to 3 slides for the results, and a couple of 3 more slides perhaps for the discussion. When I say discussion, let me reiterate, you are relating the findings of your current research paper with observations of other investigators, whether you are citing published or unpublished literature in the gray area of the library. So for the poster, I'm not sure if Dr. Wanko already stated the requirements for the poster, but in yesteryears, this is how we would normally instruct our medical students to come up with the format of the poster. So in terms of oral presentation, I also have a few simple tips to be more effective. Let's start with talking to the audience. The presenter should know the level of the audience that he or she is talking to during the scientific conference or the forum. You might be interested to know who are you engaging with? Are these a group of consultants? Are these a group of resident physician trainees? Are these medical students or postgraduate interns? If the presenter says too much, the main message may be lost. That's why sometimes less is more effective. Only talk when you have something to say. If you only have preliminary data, do not put it yet in the abstract or for an oral presentation, but rather just go with the poster presentation instead. Be sure you have a substantial amount of data that may be viewed as meaningful, and work that has been recently published or is submitted for publication is usually a good choice for discussion. Make the take-home messages pertinent.
Recording stopped.
If you were asked, if you were to ask someone, let's say a week later from the time of your presentation, what are the 3 points you expect your audience to remember? These are the take-home messages that I am referring to. If these are not the key points, then your emphasis
Recording in
for your
progress.
presentation is apparently wrong. Be logical. There should be a flow throughout the talk, and the beginning is to set the stage. The story is told in the middle, while at the end, this is where you will have the big finish with the take-home messages. So you can practice and practice and practice to make your presentations more effective by following these general rules. Presentation should also be entertaining but not overdone. So, what are examples of overdoing your presentation? Sometimes use of very histrionic outfit, or again the unnecessary movements on the stage, or slide decks that have unnecessary animation. Now, when you are presenting, try to remain focused on your topic. Do not be tangential. Sometimes, if you have mentors in the audience, they will try to guide you to go back to your original topic if you're already deviating from what you are supposed to discuss. Visual cues are also important when you do your presentation. Now, some of you might be apprehensive to deliver or to talk, but do not fret. I would highly encourage all of you to take volition to practice, let's say, in front of a mirror, do public speaking. The more presentations that you deliver, the more effective as a communicator will be. Remember, communication is part of the art of medicine. In first year, you learned of the art of medicine, perspectives in medicine. Communication is one of the key elements of why doctors can be very endearing to their patient clientele. And when I say patient clientele, it can also refer to, let's say, co-fellow doctors when you deliver a lecture or when you present in research fora. Then these are people that they will remember you for if you are very effective with the way you present. Now, when you are using visual aids, do not make it too much. Wag OA, di ba? Visual should support whatever you are discussing for it to be effective. Now, there will be some of you who might have, example, if you are presenting a qualitative study design and you have, let's say, a video of a tribal community. This is how they do, let's say, the burial ceremony. So you have a video clip of that burial ceremony. Make sure that you're checking for any potential glitch prior to your presentation. Because if there will be glitches, it makes the presentation less effective. Now, use appropriate institutional logos. Just so you know, in 2024, the UERM Medical Center came up with a new official logo. When we were still in medical school, we were referred to as the UE Ramon Magsaysay Memorial Medical Center Incorporated, UERMMMCI. Now, we tried to narrow it down. We are simply referred to as UERM Medical Center. So, if there is an opportunity for you to present your research outside of the medical center and there is a need to use the institutional logo, this is the logo that is now being recommended by our administrative officers. So basically, those are the tips that I want to share with you when you deliver an oral as well as a poster presentation. Let me be quick in saying once again that I am not perfect when it comes to presentations. However, over the years, I have developed the confidence to deliver lectures, present research in a wide variety of audiences, whether I'm talking to a group of locals or I'm talking to international communities. It is something that it's a very memorable experience. It's a pleasant experience if you will be given the opportunity to address an international audience or just present your paper outside of the medical center. I want to share with you my research journey since I returned to our beloved alma mater in 2007. So from 2007 until 2025, almost spanning 2 decades, I have been given the opportunity to mentor students and come up to really build on their potential as researchers. So allow me to share with you 2 decades of research excellence. I am hoping that this would inspire you to really use research to your advantage. A doctor need not always have a stethoscope around our necks. Sometimes, as doctors, we do a lot of talking. And this communication skill is something that we want to hone in all of you. And fortunately for me, I have been blessed to have mentees who really love research. They share my passion and the department's passion for research. So allow me to share with you 2 decades of research excellence. When I was my first year faculty member from 2007. So remember, research methods is a subject you take in second year until research projects 1, and then now that you're third year, research projects 2. So more or less it covers 2 school years. In 2007 to 2009, this was perhaps one of the best papers that I was able to mentor. And this is the title, A Quasi-Experimental Trial on the Effectiveness of Public Health Lectures on Reproductive Health on Increasing the CAP regarding contraception use among heterosexual couples in Antipolo. This paper won first place during the RIHS Research Forum. And I just tried to apply if I wanted to give the students the opportunity to present their paper in an international conference. And because I am a family physician, the first thing that came to my mind was WONCA. So WONCA is the International Organization of Family Doctors. And every year, there are 3 conferences of WONCA. WONCA Asia Pacific Regional Conference, or APRC, the WONCA World, which is usually in Canada or in the US, and the WONCA Europe. So because I was still dreaming small back then, sabi ko, subukan natin naman baka pwede tayo mag-WONCA APRC. And true enough, this was the very first student paper that was ever accepted for poster presentation at the WONCA Asia Pacific Regional Conference in Hong Kong. And back then, we were very fortunate that the administration was very supportive of student researches. And so we were given the funding to bring our third year medical students to Wonka, Hong Kong. Sadly, this was the same time that the SARS epidemic came about. And SARS, if you will recall your history, concentrated more in Hong Kong. So, for health and security reasons, although we were supposed to fly to Hong Kong, our students were eventually discouraged to participate in Wonka because of the threat of the SARS epidemic back then. The following school year, this was another student of mine. A single blind randomized controlled trial on the effectiveness of ginkgo biloba in increasing immediate and delayed memory index scores of medical students using the R bands. This won second place in the local RIHS forum. However, I also submitted this paper to the PSECP. PSECP is the Philippine Society of Experimental and Clinical Pharmacology, and we were named the very first ever champions for the student category. And one of the main proponents of this paper was actually is now a consultant at the Department of Medicine, Dr. Frances Gail M. Turalba. So you might know Dr. Gail if ever she becomes her preceptor or a lecturer in internal medicine. And I was very fortunate that so the last time I saw her as a student was in 2010, and then we shared the virtual stage back in 2021, almost a decade after. And we were now talking as colleagues about vitamin supplementation. So again, just wanted to share with you that sometimes, and because of this was the first time that UERM participated in PSECP. And back then, PSECP was dominated by the UP College of Medicine student researches. And it was the first time that UERM won the PSECP research contest for students. And after the paper of Gail and her colleagues and her co-group and her classmates, we were starting to gain recognition by PSECP as one of the powerhouses when it comes to student research, especially involving traditional and alternative medicine. Then the following year, this was in 2010. In 2011, so ito naman again in Antipolo, about a family function in malnutrition. This was also once again presented in another international convention, which was Wonka, Cebu. I stand corrected. Lahug pala is in Cebu, not in Iloilo. I stand corrected. So this was the one I was telling you about. This is in Lahug, in Waterfront Hotel. So this is an international conference, but it was held in Cebu. And again, this was the first time our students were able to present their paper in an international conference. I'm not sure if you recognize some of the people here. These are now esteemed consultants. Dr. Chua is the tall guy here, is a urologist from the Department of Surgery now. So you might have a lecture with him. He is also a faculty of the College of Medicine. So again, we started penetrating Wonka as early as 2010, 2009. And in 2011, we were able to replicate that feat and we were able to participate, but this was held in the Philippines. Then this one, the validation of group-based anger management of program in institutionalized Filipino children in conflict with the law. And I was happy that this paper was eventually was accepted for poster presentation at the International Congress, International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect in Nagoya, Japan. So as you can see, over the years, we've been sending patients, like sending our students in different parts of Asia to present their research paper. The following year, another group of mine presented this paper. So this again won in the APMC. This won the first place, and this was in Iloilo. Ito pala yung Iloilo na sinasabi ko. Nalito ako. So again, just to show you, that's me several pounds ago, together with Dr. Niles in the photo. So here, was the start that APMC was now getting research papers from UERM, and we were slowly being recognized as we were slowly becoming again another powerhouse for creating student research papers. Now, this was a paper that was supervised by the former dean of the College of Medicine and our lone professor emeritus in community medicine, Dr. Georgina T. Paredes. So Dr. Paredes is a former dean of the College of Medicine, and again, she's the lone professor emeritus. But she is not really a clinician. So when this paper was being executed by her students, I became an informal advisor of this group. And this paper eventually became a finalist at the ISCOMS. This is the International Student Congress of Biomedical Sciences, and this was held at the University Medical Center Groningen in the Netherlands. So hindi lang kami nagsimula hindi lang na kami Asia. So yung dati, ang puros Asian countries lang kami. Hong Kong, Japan, Philippines. Now, meron na kaming Europe, no? And I remember, so we sent students to the Netherlands. We only send one, no? We only send one student. Kasi if you have batchmates, if you have group mates who are all Disney princesses and they have enough money to be tag-alongs, minsan nakaka-tag-along. Pero yung sinasubsidize na for international trips is just one student. No? So, iba dito, di ko alam kung sino ang Disney princesses dito, but they were able to go to the Netherlands and, present. So, in this old photo, again, that is me several pounds ago. And in this photo, you would see several past chairs of the Department of Preventive and Community Medicine. We have here, again, the Vice President for Research, Dr. Niles, the former college secretary, Dr. Grace Brizuela, our former department chair, the late Dr. Leopoldo P. Season, and of course, our lone professor emeritus in community medicine, this is Dr. Georgina Paredes, and the lone president emeritus, Professor Emeritus of the College of Medicine University, the late Dr. Fernando S. Sanchez Jr. So yung RIHS, the Research Institute for Health Sciences, holds the annual Fernando S. Sanchez Jr. Research Forum for the entire medical center. This is in honor of Dr. Nanding. So you can see Sir Nanding in this photo. And of course, you might encounter Dr. Cabanos. Here, she was much, much thinner back then. And Dr. Zulweta used to be a faculty of the Department of Preventive and Community Medicine before he transferred to the Department of Biochemistry. So this was the year that we sent our first-time students to the ISCOMS. That was almost a decade ago, more than a decade ago, in 2014. Then the following year, this was another paper. These are all my student advisory groups. Kung mapapansin niyo, year in, year out, I am very proud of my student mentees. Never pa akong napahiya sa aking mga students. They always give me pleasure to be their mentors, and of course they are gaining recognition not just within the medical center but in other parts of the Philippines through other specialty societies, and of course even internationally. So this is also one of my groups, the comparison of family functionality and quality of life of families in association to ABA versus standard of care for children with autism. This was also once again a finalist at the ISCOMS in the Groningen Medical Center in the Netherlands. So again, we only send one student, but if there are Disney princesses, they can also join together with the one sponsored speaker. So again, that opportunity for you to travel and get to present your paper. Now, this is something that I want you to have in the future. Now, this paper is also my paper, advisory group. At the Philippine Academy of Family Physicians, it won second place. That same year, the first place was actually a paper that was mentored by Dr. Wangko. So at the PAFP, the first and second place were also from UERM, besting students from the UP College of Medicine, the UST Faculty of Medicine and Surgery, the Pamatasang Lungsod ng Maynila College of Medicine, FEU, Nicanor Reyes Memorial Medical Foundation, MCU, among other things. So we were showing our prowess as a research institute through our student papers. And then this one, I was also named finalist in the research forum. So you can see whenever I give, not to pressure my current groups, so whenever I talk to when I select topics for implementation for my groups, I always envision where can we present the paper in an international stage. That's what I want for my groups. Aside from being published, aside from being cited by other studies, I also want to give the experiential learning to our students that they were able to present their paper outside of the medical center. So again, more topics though for our papers. Again, we were sending our student. These are all my advisory groups. As I've said, walang taon na wala akong student na nakapag-present sa labas ng UERM, whether domestic, local, or international. They always give me so much pride. This is also another very interesting study that they did. Back then kasi we were still allowed to do clinical trials. Pero when the ERC started to become more structured, they discouraged clinical trials being conducted by medical students. But this time, for the very first time, we not only sent our students to ISCOMS, but they also won first prize doon sa geriatrics category. So again, you can see we could only send one student, but sometimes there are students who are very eager to travel the world. They can, out of their own pocket, they can travel and join their group mates. So this is also another proud moment for UERM in an international stage. Again, I'm very proud of my advisory group. They won session winner for the geriatrics category. The following year, this also won, and this was again an international conference. But again, it was held in Manila. So kahit na international, pero Metro Manila, go pa rin. Again, kasi at least you get to meet international judges, you get to meet international colleagues, and we won second place with this topic on laughter yoga. Then this one, permissive parenting style. So this is now 2020. This paper was actually accepted for poster presentation at Groningen once again. So meron na naman tayong papadala sa Europe. But of course, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were still in enhanced community quarantine. So we weren't able to send our students to the Netherlands in June 2020. But this was converted to an online platform, and our students still presented in the online ISCOMS. Eventually, this paper was also published in our local journal in RIHS. Then the following year, so we were now having the opportunity to slowly reopen economy. So we were excited that we were invited to participate this time in Bangkok. So here was the first time we participated at the International Medical Student Research Conference at the Phramongkut Klao College of Medicine in Bangkok, Thailand, and we bagged for the very first time that we were called the overall winner. We wanted to go to Bangkok back then. So pinayagan na. So remember nung 2020, kasagsagan ng COVID, sabi ng university president, no, we will not send students out for safety reasons. Tapos nung December, pinayagan na, sabi, oh, we're easing out the quarantine, we will allow international travel. So we were already booking our hotel, we were getting our airfare, but then the COVID, the Omicron came about. So ito yung kasagsagan ng Omicron. So yung Omicron, remember, was a new strain in December 2021. And because of the strain, parang sabi ko sa mga estudyante ko, wag na lang tayo pumunta kasi bagong strain. So natakot kami. So we had to back out. But the Phramongkut Klao College of Medicine offered if we wanted to participate via Zoom. And so we did. And fortunately, we won first place. Then the following year, this was now the paper of Dr. Wangko. They also went to the same, I'm sorry. So this was in 2021. That same year pala, another group of mine was also invited to the Netherlands. Pero ito, nagkaroon ng conflict sa schedule. So hindi rin nakapunta ng ISCOMS yung aming student. I can't remember but hindi nakapunta. But so year in, year out, no, if the department, every year parang the department sends at least one student delegate to ISCOMS. And I've been very fortunate that many of these representatives of UURM are my advisory group, no? So, not to put pressure on the current groups, pero parang di naman sila nagayabang, pero nagayabang ako. Parang ng mga estudyante ko, parang sanay na ako na meron silang international travel. In fact, kapag walang international travel, para akong nanglulungkot pa kasi parang sayang yung opportunity for them to travel. And then the following year, I told you na this was the paper of Dr. Wangko. So the previous year, yung kila Vash, they sent them to Phramongkut Klao. This was now the paper of Dr. Wangko. They won second place, first runner-up, also from Phramongkut Klao, and they won 2,000 baht. Di ko alam kung magkano na panalunan nung... So yeah, first runner-up or second place. So this is the paper of Dr. Wangko naman. Again, just to give you resibo na nagpapadala kami talaga ng mga estudyante abroad. So this is again in December of 2022. And then last year, this is also my group. This group was also, this time we were able to send once again my student to ISCOMS. And again, for the second time na nag-participate, this is pang ilang beses na kami nag-ISCOM, but for the second time we won the special category. Ito wala siyang kasamang, mag-isa lang si Jay, no? Jay Pukan went to the Netherlands. So yan, siya lang, wala siyang kasama mga Disney princesses. So nanalo siya, but this same paper was also accepted at Wonka Europe. Diba I told you Wonka has different what do you call that, categories. Wonka Asia Pacific region, Wonka World, which is US or Canada, and Wonka Europe. So if you will notice, yung sa ISCOMS, this was in June 2023. So this was in the Netherlands, and what we did, because this was the first time na sabay-sabay, one student paper gaining recognition, we told Jay to just take the train to travel from the Netherlands. He went to uh, Belgium to attend naman Wonka Europe. So si Jay was able to attend two international conferences, the one in Netherlands and the one in Belgium. Actually, may pangatlo pa sana, Wonka Asia Pacific region in Australia naman. Kaso sabi namin, wala nang budget kasi pinapili kami ni Dr. Niles, just choose one. Eh sabi ko, Ma'am Jen, baka pwede naman na para isang Schengen visa application lang naman, doon na lang kami sa Europe. But just to give you just to share with you that experience, not all students can vouch na, oh, my medical school gave me the opportunity to present my paper outside of the Philippines. So eventually, so again, pruweba, para lang sabihin ko, baka drawing lang, this is proof that we are sending our students outside of the country. And just last year, I was able to send three different papers at Wonka Asia Pacific Regional Conference in Singapore. So this is Dr. Gian Alquino. He is the class valedictorian of this current batch of clerks. This is the first oral presentation. So this was in Wonka APRC. The second paper also in Wonka APRC. So this is my second paper that was presented orally. And the third paper was a poster presentation, but also in Wonka. So considering on 2024, three out of three students we sent outside of the Philippines. Actually, meron pang isang grupo to, no, yung Wonka Europe. If I'm not mistaken, this was the group under Dr. Adversario. The paper of Dr. Adversario's group was supposed to be presented at Wonka, Ireland. Wonka Europe, Ireland. Pero, natuloy ba yun, Pao? Pao? Yeah. Anyway, so hindi natuloy lang for some reason. But, yun. Huh? So, if you will notice, year in, year out, from 2008 to 2023, palagi akong, or to 2008 to 2024, meron akong estudyante na napapadala namin sa iba't ibang bahagi ng mundo to present their papers. I was a bit sad this year kasi wala akong student from the College of Medicine ngayon, yung mga clerks ngayon, no? Hindi kasi sila masyadong eager beaver. No one tried to send out their papers. So wala akong student na nakapag-present internationally ngayong 2025. But, again, as I've said, because I am really for research, I have a graduate school student here in UERM in the graduate school, and her thesis from the graduate school, Master of Science in Tropical Medicine. So we are co-authors. So Dr. Molina Adorable is also a clinician of the medical city, just like me, and she was my student also at the graduate school, a Master of Science in Tropical Medicine. I was fortunate that for 2025, her paper was now accepted at the 18th Asia Pacific Rim University's Global Health Conference in Malaysia. And this will happen in October 2025. The Asia Pacific Rim Universities, there's only one Filipino medical center that is affiliated with the Asia Pacific Rim University, or the APRU, and that is the UP College of Medicine. But for the very first time, UERM is sending a delegate, and I am so I'm not sure if I will join Dr. Molina Adorable in her journey to present her paper, because this is her first time to present a paper internationally. So she's asking me if I could accompany her and join her in Malaysia come October, but they haven't really decided because ang daming ganap dito sa UERM din. So that's 2 decades of research excellence. But as I've said, not just from presentation. But when you are able to publish your papers, that's even more impressive. When you have a publication and you put it, let's say, for example, the RIHS Health Sciences Journal is also recognized internationally. So even researchers outside of the Philippines can actually check the website and they can read the journals. If you look at the journals, if you look at the content, a lot of our students are getting their papers published. Especially yung mga nape-present outside. I tell them, i-publish natin. Kasi it will make your curriculum vitae impressive. Let's say, for example, you apply for residency or you apply for whatever work in the future. And you tell your future employers, oh, I have a published research. That could be an edge for you in terms of work opportunities. So, maganda na meron kayong publications. So, kapag matapos natin tong research ito, some of you might say, oh, research is just one academic requirement. No, I'm telling you, this research that you are doing now could open doors for you in the future. When you apply for residency, when you apply for future work, it will open doors for you. And over the years, I've been very fortunate to work with colleagues within UERM to have multiple publications. In our Department of Preventive and Community Medicine, I want to believe that your faculty, we walk the talk. When we say we are researchers, check the research output of Dr. Niles, Dr. Wangko, Dr. Tolosa, Dr. Adversario. We have multiple publications both in local and international journals. And this is a feat that not many clinicians can claim. Even the most highly esteemed clinicians, some of our colleagues at the other side of JMC don't have publications. But we, here at the Department of Preventive and Community Medicine, I would like to categorically say that if there is a department that has a big number of publications, it is our faculty here in the Department of Preventive and Community Medicine. And these are journals that span a variety of topics, whether we're talking of non-communicable diseases, communicable diseases, even diseases of rapid urbanization and industrialization. When we're talking of mental health, a lot of our faculty members are producing a good number of research publications. And of course, I am very, very proud of my colleagues. At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, habang lahat tayo aligaga, who would have thought that Dr. Niles, Dr. Adversary, and I would be able to come up with 3 internationally published real-world evidence studies that really helped change, or at least address the public health burden of COVID-19. So, kahit na may pandemya, your faculty members were walking the talk. So, ito yung gusto kong ma-imbibe nyo. Again, when we talk of doctors, not all doctors are meant to be in the confines of the clinic or in the hospitals. Some of your colleague doctors are in the community, some are in health administration, in policy development, others are in research, and others do a variety or in the medical academia. For me, how did I use the research that I got into making me a better doctor? I told you earlier on that the paradigm is that we are not only 5-star, we are 6-star physicians. One of the things that I was able to, this is my short-lived career in GMA 7. So I was getting regular shows from Super Radio, DZBB in December. I was sharing the stage with Miss Shirley Escalante. So she was the program host. But she has a segment, the Super Kalusugan, and we were starting to. I was gaining traction. I was being. So this is like the tele. Parang this is aired on radio, but we were also being viewed on TV. So akala ka it could be the start of something big for me, no? But so unfortunately, COVID happened. So when COVID happened, syempre nawala yung mga shows. So I only lasted for about 2 months, December to January. Then we had to scrap the show because uh, the COVID-19 pandemic happened nga tapos bawal lumabas. Diba sabi nga ni Kim Chu, bawal lumabas. So, but why was I being invited? Because they realized that they needed people to talk of epidemiology. They wanted people to talk about current problems of the Philippines in terms of the health sector. And normally, these would look for resource people who are experts in certain fields, especially when we're talking of epidemiology. So when I told you earlier on, when we talk of research, you could be the doers of research, or you could be on the other end, the users, the end users of research. People generate data when we do research, but how do we translate data into everyday use? How do we translate the data into our everyday engagement with our families, with our communities? This is what research has taught me. Beyond the research fora, beyond the scientific conferences, we can put research into more practical use. And then not only that, at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was being invited by different pharmaceutical companies sharing the online stage with experts. No? I'm sure you know Edsel Salvania. Edsel Salvania is a batch higher sa akin sa UP Diliman, BS Biology, and the UP College of Medicine, one batch ahead of me. And of course, I was sharing it with other experts, no? Professor Andrew Shepard from the United Kingdom. So ito medyo parang celebrity host James Deacon and Eric Santos. So we were talking about COVID in one of the scientific sessions. The bottom line is they want public health experts to talk about a problem, which was the COVID-19. And they want it from a perspective of a clinician and infectious disease specialist, such as Edsel, and also to put the public health dimension. And that's where I come into the picture. Because I was very confident when it comes to research data, epidemiology, and public health, I was able to put this into my private practice. And starting that, I started to get more and more speaking engagements from a variety of pharmaceutical companies because they get to know you to be someone of authority in the public health figure. Moving forward, this is also one of my immortalities, having to be interviewed by Yahoo Philippines. And again, our topic was still because of my background in tropical medicine and because of my good grasp of epidemiology research data, we were able to discuss COVID-19 at a deeper public health perspective. And again, this is beyond research. You are not only using your learned skills, your communication skills, but even your knowledge of certain medical conditions and how do you translate it in everyday living. So just wanted to highlight here, sabi ko, nung nakita ko to sa Yahoo, talagang screen capture kasi sabi ko baka mabura na to. Eventually wala akong resibo na I was once interviewed, no? And of course this was seen by many people outside of the Philippines. And then again sharing it with because of the real world study that Dr. Niles and Dr. Adversary and I did, we were also being invited by other companies. So we are now becoming resource speakers, even in public press conferences. So Sharing the stage also with Dr. Anthony Leachon. I'm sure you know him as a public health advocate, a former DOH special advisor for COVID, and one of the medical specialists from Asian Hospital, and an IDS specialist, infectious disease specialist, an alumnus of the URM College of Medicine, Dr. Obet Salvino. So sharing the stage with them is something that was a very fruitful experience for me. So why is it I'm sharing this with you? Because I was able to use research into shaping it into how I now use evidence-based clinical practice, or how I champion evidence-based clinical practice. If you are very good with understanding research data, sometimes they invite you to become content experts. You become members of advisory boards of various pharmaceutical companies. And for me, getting to different parts of the globe was part of the fruits of what I am now getting from years of understanding research. So if you get to attend international conventions, whether in Asia or we're in Europe, no? It becomes very fulfilling. No? Different experts calling you, different you share the stage with different renowned, highly esteemed academicians, and again, not all clinicians can say this, because not all clinicians value research. As I've said, we can become all researchers, but how you put your research into everyday clinical practice, it is something that I want you to learn or appreciate. Right now, baka yung research nyo is about the tip of the iceberg, but it could open doors for you. And that's what I want you to experience now, the journey of how to be a holistic, no, 5-star physician na hindi lang puro clinical dimension ang nahuhon, but even the dimension or the facet of being a researcher. So in summary, what have I discussed with you this afternoon? Again, not to put pressure on my research groups, no, pero sana, my hope is, I have several research groups. I also adopted one group from Dr. Dimla. I'm hoping at least one of you would also continue on my legacy na every year, meron ako napadadalang student outside of UERM to share your expertise, to share your paper, because in any academic discourse, that engagement will always be something that will be considered productive. When presenting research, whether oral or poster form, your main tasks will be to answer questions, provide further details, and to convince our peers that what you have done is something that is technically sound and relevant. In an oral presentation, the speaker has more control over what the audience can focus on. And as the speaker proceeds an oral presentation, he or she can tell a story and lead his audience along particular paths of reasoning and thoughts. Sometimes, ito yung mga bakit tayo nagiging influencer ng mga ibang doktor. It's because of the products of research. With a poster presentation, the audience is free to key in on specific points that they may be particularly interested in. The material presented in poster form must convey the essence of the research undertaking. A research poster is simply a static visual medium that the researcher can use to communicate his or her ideas and messages. As lifelong learners, doctors are expected to hone not only our critical thinking capabilities, but also our communication skills. Very few doctors get to master that, or to have that boost of confidence that you can hold a scientific session in front of hundreds or thousands of people, and you maintain and you sustain their interest because of your effective communication skills. Physicians must have that burning passion for new learning, which may be acquired from academic discussions during research fora and other scientific conferences. For this afternoon's lecture, these are some of the references that I used for the lecture. If you want to check on these, you might want to do a supplemental reading. And of course, I am now formally ending my lecture with you. I recently saw Into the Woods, and there was a one of the songs is a wish. I wish, ganyan. And uh, what my wish for you is this. My wish is for you to see research not just as not just as mere compliance for academic requirements, but I want you to view research as an opportunity for professional growth and career enhancement. Because at the end of the day, what you feel is just academic requirement, compliance purposes, but if ever you get to publish your paper outside of the publish your paper in a renowned journal, in a peer-reviewed journal, or if there's an opportunity for you to present your paper outside of the medical center, it will make your curriculum vitae very impressive, making you competitive, putting you at the top of the potential future employees of any institution that you wish to be a part of. And so with that, thank you and good afternoon to everyone. If you have questions, I'll be more than willing to answer any inquiries from you now. Meron ba?